Welcome to Remembering the Podcast. Today we have a guest with us, Craig Meriwether. He is a mindset coach and clinical hypnotherapist, helping people eliminate negative emotions and trauma so they can reach their full potential. Craig is a certified clinical hypnotherapist, medical hypnosis specialist, neuro-linguistic programming specialist, and founder of Arizona Integrative Hypnotherapy, helping people eliminate the negative emotions and limiting beliefs that may be keeping them from reaching their full potential. For over 12 years, Craig has been helping people heal from early childhood trauma, helping cancer patients with pain control, veterans with post-traumatic stress disorder, students with test anxiety, entrepreneurs with confidence, athletes with peak performance, and anyone who may be dealing with overwhelm, fear, and anxiety. Craig is also founder of Divinus Arcana, hypnotherapy for spiritual healing, helping people heal with past life regression therapy, spirit world regression, and connecting people with their spirit guides and ancestors. So thank you, Craig, for joining us today.
Natasha, I really appreciate your invitation to be on your show. We've been kind of going back and forth for a couple of months scheduling, and I've been really looking forward to this. This is the fun conversations I love to have, so I'm really looking forward to it.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for your time. So can you start us off with a background history of where you've come from, how you got into this to where you are today?
Sure. And like a lot of people who get into the more therapeutic fields to help other people, this started with my own hurt and pain, my own depression and anxiety I was struggling with as a teenager. And that was back in the 1980s. And there's, back then they didn't have the Prozacs and the SSRI drugs that that have helped some people with depression. Those didn't come out till the 90s, mid 90s, late 90s. And so really in the 1980s, of course, no internet. You had talk therapy and whatever book you could find at the library or your bookstore.
Mhm.
And of course, as a teenager, you're probably not going to do either. And so I really just kind of held on to it, tried to make myself as comfortable as possible into my 20s and the 1990s. And it just became something that you get used to. It's just something, you think this is how it's going to be. This is who you are.
Mm.
And my mother struggled with depression. I struggle with it. And whether was a genetic issue or just mirroring what I saw in the home, we both struggle with this. And it was really the birth of my son in 2000 that I really decided I needed to get my life together. I needed to fix this, because if it was either or, nature or nurture, then I wanted to be able to help my son with that. And so it took some time, on and off, trying to figure out what it's all about. By, of course, the early 2000s, you had the internet coming out, a lot more information to get a hold of, and more able to do the research, whether at the library or bookstore or the internet. And I started working with the techniques and the strategies and the exercises about anxiety and depression. And after some time of working on myself, I woke up one morning and I noticed I hadn't been depressed in a while. I just kind of had taken off the coat, if you will, and realized that, if you've ever gone backpacking, if any of your listeners have gone out into the wilderness with a backpack on, like 25-pound backpack, you hike for 6 hours, and all of a sudden you just take off that backpack and you just feel that lightness of it all. You're still you, but there's a lightness to it all. And that's what it felt like. And I realized I had a toolbox full of tools, techniques, strategies, skills, exercises that I could show other people. And in wanting to kind of spread the word about what I've learned, I met a few people at my son's school. We were all friends. They also wanted to do their own work out in the world. We kind of came up with a mastermind group to encourage each other, to offer advice, to inspire each other. And I ended up joining a book contest, writing contest with Hay House back in
Mm.
2010, I guess, about depression. So I started writing a book about depression. One of those kind of contests that starts with 500 people, and the next month it's down to 250, and then the next month it's 100, and then 50, all the way down till it's about 5 people. And I made it into the last round,
Mm.
and which was very exciting because it meant that they were encouraged by the subject matter. They knew that it was important to be out there. And while I didn't win the contest and therefore the publishing contract, uh, they did say I came in a close second. And I was invited to be in a compilation book called Pearls of Wisdom with Jack Canfield and Marcy Shimoff and some other people that were on the Hay House roster. In promoting that, I started doing some telesummits. Back in the day, you did telesummits, and which led to my own podcast. And because I've always had a heavy interest in spirituality since
Mm.
I was a kid. I grew up in the Episcopal Church while also going to a Baptist-run school, which are
Mm.
sometimes alternating viewpoints, which can be quite confusing for a child.
Yes.
When I moved into the 1990s, into my 20s, and moved to Santa Cruz, California to go to UC Santa Cruz, University of California, Santa Cruz, it opened me up to a lot of different cultures, a lot of different ways of thinking and believing and, praying and worshiping. And so not just things like music and dance and food, but just way to express your spirituality. And so I started investigating a lot of stuff and really realized that I loved that kind of knowledge.
Mm.
And I don't know if you'd call it experimentation, but what is Japanese Zen Buddhism all about? What is Sufism from Turkey all about? And exploring these different things. And felt like I grew a lot. We, with the birth of my son, we moved to a small town in Arizona called Flagstaff up in the mountains,
Mhm.
where there's a lot of Native American culture.
Mhm.
And so I learned a lot, and it also intrigued me a lot. And one of the things that really helped me with my depression and anxiety was hypnotherapy. And I also, as I was researching more about hypnotherapy, because I loved it so much, that helped me, I was sort of investigating it over some years to see, well, is this a right fit for me? Is this something I could do? Because I loved it so much. I want to, I had a desire to help other people, change the world in whatever way I can. And I ended up uh, training in hypnotherapy at a wonderful school, Hypnotherapy Academy of America, Albuquerque, New Mexico. Extraordinary school. So much amazing training, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., Monday through Friday for 2.5 months. This is
Oh.
500 hours of extraordinary training just in clinical hypnosis, medical hypnosis, but also the last 2 weeks, module 5, is past life regression and natal therapy, spirit world regression. And the reason I went to that school is because of this strong foundation that they have, not only
Mm.
in hypnotherapy, but going all the way to the more spiritual side of this work. And it just thrilled me to know, and it was such extraordinary work, such interesting work. So I live near Sedona, Arizona. A lot of your listeners probably know, I'm sure you do too, Natasha, about Sedona, Arizona, a very high-powered spiritual community, beautiful red rocks in kind of mid-central Arizona.
Mm.
And I decided I felt I should brand myself a little away from the spiritual side because there was so much of that work happening near me.
Mhm.
And I wanted to more legitimize this work because there is a lot of baggage around the word hypnosis,
Mhm.
especially around the spiritual side of hypnosis, of doing past life regression. And so I wanted to focus on the more clinical side, medical hypnosis, dealing with trauma, kind of how you introduced the show. But what's always interested me is the spiritual side of things. And so I kind of started this offshoot, this secondary uh, aspect of the work I do, and to kind of differentiate it, I wanted to do a different name. And so I call that part of it Divinus Arcana, which is Latin for sacred mystery. I tend to pick the most difficult to remember and difficult to spell names for my businesses, but between Arizona Integrative Hypnotherapy and Divinus Arcana, but it looks good on a t-shirt. So I thought that was kind of cool. And it's just, I love doing this work. It's extraordinary to facilitate somebody. And what's different about what I do and is I help you have your past life regression. I'm not telling you what your past lives were. You experience it for yourself. You experience the spirit world for yourself. So a lot of times people will, maybe they go to Sedona or they go to a sacred site, maybe in whatever part of the world you live in, and find somebody who does this work. And for some money, they'll tell you over the course of a half an hour, 2 or 3 of your past lives. And that's interesting. Maybe it's even helpful and useful. But I find it more healing, more insightful to experience it yourself. And that's the work I do. I facilitate this work for you. I kind of lifeguard the situation, as if you will, as you swim in the pool of the spiritual energy, to be poetic about it. And it's extraordinary. It's extraordinary to help people with that. And so it's really stems from a lifelong curiosity to discover more about spirituality, whether it's my own heritage of, Craig Meriwether, you can't get more English than that. I think 95% of my, genetics point to the United Kingdom, whether it's English or Welsh or Scottish or Irish, and maybe a little bit of French and a little bit of German. And so I backed away from that for a long time, the Episcopal Church, the Baptist Church of America, and explored these other things. But I'm finding myself drawn more towards that now, more of my heritage and my ancestors. And, I think a lot of the work I've been doing has helped me do that, reclaim that for myself. So,
Oh, that's amazing. Very interesting story.
yeah.
It is amazing to go through and uncover your ancestry
Yeah.
from this realm and others. And yeah, we can go into it more later, but my regression with you was,
Yeah.
it's powerful. And I have had the experiences before, but like you were talking about experience, it is important for us to experience it for ourselves rather than just getting a reading or having someone tell you. And that has its place as well. But like you were saying, I think we transform the most through our own experiences. And what we're experiencing, we can process things a lot better. So yeah, I love that you mentioned that.
Yeah.
So yeah, did you want to add something or?
Well, you let the cat out of the bag. You let the big secret. Last week we did a past life regression together, and that was some of the kind of back and forth we've been doing over the last couple of months in terms of timing. You're in Australia. I'm an American. I don't know the exact time difference, but it's something like a 14-hour time difference. You're
Yes.
a day ahead of me, and so trying to work all that out with life and family and work and all that.
Exactly.
But the reason I love doing this, I've done this once before with a podcast host. It's extraordinary to have, because now you have something to talk about. It's not just me kind of reading the brochure of this work. You've had the experience of it, and you can come from firsthand. And we did it like this, exactly like this, over
Exactly.
Zoom, me looking at you through a screen, you looking at
Yeah.
me. You just found a comfortable place to be in a
Yeah.
comfortable chair, because it's a long process the way I do it. And it's a 3-hour process.
Mhm.
And so I follow the Michael Newton protocol of this work. And a lot of your listeners, I'm sure, are very familiar with Michael Newton. He wrote Journey of Souls, Destiny of Souls.
Mhm.
And really quickly, with Michael Newton and how he came to this work of spiritual regression, past life regression, and he's passed on at this point. I think he passed in 2011. But in the late 60s, I think 1969, he accidentally, as a psychotherapist, was doing some hypnosis work, regressing somebody to deal with some trauma in their early, or what they thought was early childhood trauma. And he, quote unquote, accidentally regressed his patient back to the spirit world, or his patient went all the way back to spirit world. And by that, I mean at life between lives, as Michael Newton describes, or soul realm or spirit world before you incarnate as a body here on earth. So where's your soul in before you incarnate here on earth, or maybe somewhere else, another dimension, another planet? That's a whole, probably another episode right there talking about that. But in terms of Michael Newton and his work, he regressed somebody back to being a soul before incarnating on earth. And he was fascinated by this. And so he spent some time in the early 70s focusing on if he could do it again. And so he specifically worked with people, some volunteers, to say, I'm going to see if I can regress you back to spirit world. And after working with some, few hundred people, he had come up with a protocol on how to move your, what some people call super conscious level of mind, or your higher self, your spirit, if you will, back to soul realm, back to being a full soul before incarnating on earth. And as he was working with people, he noticed that the people he's working with who didn't know each other came from different backgrounds, different ethnicities, different cultures, different genders, were having similar experiences of their time in the soul world. Now, this is the 70s. They're not reading this stuff on the internet. There's no books out there. So they're coming up with this on their own. They're coming from around the country. They did not know each other. And they were having similar experiences. So now he starts researching, well, what's that all about? And he spent the late 70s in the 1980s researching by asking questions, by discovering and basically kind of making this outline or this map of people's experiences. And so after working with thousands of people over the course of at least 15 years, he wrote the first book, Journey of Souls. And it's about this exploration of people's experiences. He then did another decade's worth of work with another 1,000 or so people, wrote the second book, the volume 2, Destiny of Souls, which is even twice as big as the first book. And it was in the early 2000s that he started the Michael Newton Institute that provides training in this work, classes, workshops, even year-long trainings. Now, as I mentioned before, he's passed away 2011, but the Michael Institute is still alive and kicking. And you look it up, the Newton Institute or michaelnewtoninstitute.com, something like that. And they're still doing classes, still doing workshops, still producing books. I think they've come out with 2 or 3 books since Michael Newton has passed away. But this work that I do focuses on his protocol and the way he does it. And that's why it takes a bit longer than maybe people are used to. It's not the half-hour session or the hour session. The reason why it takes 3 hours, one is, of course, we're going to email back and forth a lot of information to get you prepared. But we're going to spend the first, little bit, 5-10 minutes discussing what it is you want to work on. And then we're going to do a warm-up exercise to kind of warm up the 5 senses, awaken your auditory, your vision, your feeling states, maybe even smell, taste, touch. And once we kind of awaken the senses, kind of open up your inner sight, we talk a little bit more about the theory behind, and which we could talk about in a little bit if you like, but the theory behind why this works, the science behind past life regression, because there is science behind it, research behind it. And take maybe a little break. This is around the 35-40 minute mark. We take a bathroom break, water break. And then for the next some 2.5 hours, 2 hours, 45 minutes, we're doing the past life regression, a spirit world regression. You want questions answered? Let's ask the questions. If you want people identified in your life, whether it's a loved one, family member, good friend, that teacher back in school you had for 1 semester but really inspired you, you want to find out whether they're part of your soul group, maybe some sort of spirit guide. Have you lived in past lives before? We can find this information. And we have enough time to ask all the questions, including about purpose, including about mission in your current life, your ultimate goals in this life, and how to achieve them. If you're unaware of that, well, let's ask.
Yeah.
And that's why it ends up being this extraordinary, insightful, this discovery of your purpose, your mission, as well as very healing. Because oftentimes the past life you're going to explore is something that maybe is causing some hurt and pain in this world, possibly even physical pain. I've worked with people where they've healed physical pain just sort of kind of by accident, where we're up in the healing space of the spirit world. And there's a point where we're healing, energetic healing, spiritual healing, whatever it needs. And there's a point where we do a disconnecting of the cords,
Mhm.
pull out the cords of the anxiety, the anger, the hurt, the pain that maybe have connected you to these past lives. And this one person I was working with, unbeknownst to me until we were emailing each other a few days later just to check up on, how it was going. And she told me, it was like, while she's in the healing space, she had her guides help her pull out the cord that was causing her hip pain of some 2 decades. That the doctors, the physical therapist, nobody could figure out why she had this constant pain, this chronic pain, and pulled out the cord, gone. And I
Yeah.
didn't even know she was doing it. She didn't talk about it. She didn't mention she had this pain. It's just when she was in the healing space, she saw, oh, I'm going to heal this. And on her own, using the help of her guides, she asked permission, or not permission, but help from her guides to heal this. And they helped her. I didn't even know that was happening.
Mm.
And so it can be extraordinarily healing. Again, that's why, I'm not here to fix anybody. I'm not here to tell you what your past life was or how it applies to your current life. You're going to figure that out yourself. You're going to find the insights. You're going to find discoveries. And what I like about, you know, assisting, people like yourself, Natasha, is that you get to experience this. And now firsthand, you can talk about it in your way because you have this voice and this platform to talk about spirituality in a safe way
Mm.
to a lot of people. And now that you've had this experience, you know it's legitimate. You've had an extraordinary experience, and it's a amazing thing to help people through.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, 100%. And the way that the whole lead up to your session, like the pre-work that you put in to make sure that clients feel comfortable, they're ready, they understand fully the process, um, even through the warm up. Like I found that helpful. I'm someone that practices visualization and, regularly. So I felt like I could do that quite easily. But I was also thinking during that process about the people that had never done it before. And I feel like that would be it was very well guided by you to go
Thank
through
you.
and to feel that. And I think that's really important. Just the whole lead up to it was very professional. It was very gentle. It was guided perfectly. So yeah, I think that
Oh,
was
thank you.
really, I think it's really important. Yeah.
Yeah. I think so too. And unless you've done, multiple past life regressions, and not specifically with me, but other people, then maybe, you know, you sense that your intuition and your inner guidance is already, warmed up. But the reason why we practice that warm up exercise is that part of it, as you remember, we were like, see the outside of your home. Now zoom out so you can see
Mhm.
like a Google Earth view or like a bird's eye view of your home. Now zoom in. And now turn up the lights. And now turn down the lights. Now turn up the sound, turn down the sound, change the song. Remove yourself from the, your home and move back to a movie theater, this kind of thing. Is because you can practice that within the past life regression. Because you may be in a spot where maybe it's really dark and dim in the room or outside where you are. Okay, well, how about turning up the lights a bit and seeing where you are? Or you hear voices in the next room, but you can't hear what they're saying. Well, turn up the sound a bit, turn up the volume.
Mm.
That the books on the bookshelf, I can't really see what they say. Well, zoom in and see what the titles are on those books. All these different things. If it's too intense, zoom out. Or you can't tell where you are, zoom out and get a bird's eye view of where you are. Or again, you can't read the letter on the table, zoom in. And by practicing this in a more safer way of just being in your home or a movie theater or something like that, you get the idea of like, oh, I can do this. I can
Mm.
zoom, and see the top of my house or zoom in and turn up the lights of my kitchen or turn them off. And when you realize you can do that, like, okay, well, now you know how to do this.
Mhm.
And so you really get a sense of how powerfully, excuse me, how powerful you are,
Mhm.
not only within your subconscious mind, but by accessing the super conscious level of mind. Again, what some people may call inner sight or inner wisdom or higher self. By accessing this part of you, you can gain great insight
Mhm.
to heal your current life, because that's the main point of what I uh, do with this work. It can be very insightful. It's great to discover past lives. It's fun. It
Mm.
really is. But a lot of the work I do with people is to heal something specific.
Mhm.
Maybe there's just chronic anxiety. They don't know what it is. Maybe somebody, they live here in the desert of Arizona and they have a deep-seated fear of open ocean.
Mhm.
Why? They've never seen the ocean unless they've seen like the movie Titanic or Jaws or something. Why would you have a deep-seated fear of the ocean if you live in the desert and never even been to the ocean?
Mm.
Maybe there's some other issue, a lot anger. My mom said I was born angry. Okay,
Mm.
well, let's find out why. So their main reason is for to create healing in this life. If you're struggling and you can't find a common era reasoning behind the hurt and the pain and the trauma. But it also, again, can be very insightful. Maybe we go back to, uh, the past life where you met your greatest spiritual teacher, or we go back to the past life. Maybe you have a great skill in a musical instrument, or art, or math, or science, or something. One idea, one theory behind the great masters of whether you're, say, Yo-Yo Ma, considered one of the great cello players of all time, or a great opera singer she's a soprano, or Bruce Lee, the great martial arts um, practitioner back in the 60s and 70s. Uh, to get to that level of mastery took many lifetimes.
Mm.
So Yo-Yo Ma just didn't pick up the cello at the age of 4, which he did, pick up the cello at 4, and then he was a master. It took many lifetimes to get to the point where in this life he could be the master cello player that he is. It took many lifetimes for Bruce Lee to get at that level. It took many lifetimes for Meryl Streep to become the great actress that she is.
Mm.
So maybe go back to the past life where you started studying the art form or the science that you're so good at. It can be anything like that, whatever you're interested in working on and discovering.
Mm.
But what I really like to do is I like to help people deal with the hurt and pain.
Yeah.
And that's really important because I think a lot of times, because sometimes it's only that half an hour,
Mm.
and then they're off to the next person to tell them what their past life's all about. And you don't get that healing. You just realize, oh, I got this hurt and pain. Oh, now I understand why. Wow, I feel awful. And
Mm.
that's, I don't know, that seems like a lot of money to pay to just feel awful about
Yeah.
it. One of the reasons why this is so important to me is Tim Zimmerman, who's the director of the Hypnotherapy Academy of America in Albuquerque. Used to be in Santa Fe for you Americanites listening, and then they had to move to a bigger space in Albuquerque because the school got so popular. It's been around about 30 years. But when Tim started uh, working as a hypnotherapist, he was talking to a friend, and he says, "Yeah, I'm studying to be a hypnotherapist. I'm going to open up my own practice." And his friend said, "Oh, yeah, my ex-wife went up to Taos, New Mexico, to do a past life regression, and this past life regression, this person told her that, or no, her experience was that it was kind of back in the medieval era, and she was someone who kind of bucked authority, had a loud mouth, and ran afoul of the local authorities because she was creating some dissidents within the community. And so they arrested her, threw her in jail, and basically starved her to death as torture until she passed away after about 6 months of torture, of being starved to death in a medieval dungeon. And she realized that her jailer, the one who was torturing her in this way, was her husband in this life. And there's no healing around. It's just like, well, there you go.
Mhm.
Your husband was the person who literally tortured you to death,
Mm.
some hundreds of years ago, and divorced him.
Mm.
And there's a public record you could go to read in Santa Fe, New Mexico, that the divorce paperwork filed with the county there says that part of the reason for the divorce is because in a past life he tortured and killed me. Now I'm guessing there was probably other issues in that
Yeah.
relationship to get to that point, but it's extraordinary that one
Mhm.
of the final straws of, oh, I can't be with this guy, you know,
Yeah.
this relationship is over because there is no healing to it.
Yeah.
There was no ability to heal that and resolve that,
Mm.
and it destroyed the last straw destroyed a relationship, and
Yeah.
so that and that was some I don't know, a decade ago when I heard that story, and that stuck with me because the healing part of this is what's most important. The information is extraordinary, but
Hmm.
it's really about the healing.
Oh, I
And
love that you mentioned that because I am someone that very much believes in past lives. However, when necessary, you can go into it for healing. It's not just for information, just yes, it's fun as well, but there's a purpose
yeah,
to it for the healing. And another thing that I love that you mentioned, which is part of the reason why you're on this podcast, is because I very much believe in helping people see that they're already whole and that they're
mm,
already well. It's just returning to that state, remembering. That's why it's called Remembering the Podcast. So I love that you frame your healing sessions like that. You don't offer your perceptions around, well, you didn't with my experience, and you don't provide opinions. It's just you allow me to have my own experience and my own healing. Even the
mm.
processing of it, you're not putting in your projections and perceptions of things, which is something actually that I see a lot in the healing industry is, we have to be careful with what perceptions and projections we're giving to the client. And, so it's very important that you just allow that space for someone to experience their own healing. So yeah, what do you want to say something about that? Because I just find
Yeah,
it's just so important. And I always talk about there's a divine responsibility that we have to make sure that we're holding someone's vulnerability and consciousness in our hands. It's like it's such a responsibility.
yeah,
Yes, yeah.
yeah. That's actually an extraordinary way of putting it. I've never really thought about it that way. Um, and it makes me grateful that people are willing to trust
Mm,
and have the courage to do this kind of work that can be quite vulnerable.
yeah.
But in the past life, what is helpful is it's not just facilitating somebody to get to that past life,
Mm,
but as you experience it, we're having a conversation for this entire whatever 2.5, almost 3 hours, and I'm asking you questions, what your experience is, and it's not just for my own edification and insight, but it's about helping you have the experience that you need to have by asking you questions
mm,
and gaining the insights. Because sometimes you may just, I'm standing in a field. Maybe we're somewhere in Europe. I'm not sure. I don't know how, you might be not be asking the questions that you may, think to ask because you're in this trance state or extraordinary trance state.
mm,
And yet, because you have this ability to speak with me, I can ask questions like, well, who do you sense yourself to be?
mm,
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I feel like and even if you feel like it's a guess, that's probably the right answer. Well, I don't know, but I think I'm this person or that person.
mm.
But it's also just even asking general questions of how old are you in
Yeah.
this particular scene? And what we're going to do in the past life, I help uh, facilitate for people is we're going to jump to 4 or 5 important events in that life. So let's say, just for an example, let's just use the general example of go back to the past life that is most influencing your
Mm,
current life. So even if you don't know what you want to work on, or you don't feel you have anything, it's like, okay, well, there is a past life that's influencing this one. Which
mm,
one is most influencing your current life? Let's go
mm,
back there. And so we establish the scene. Where are you?
mm,
What can you sense around you? And it may take a moment for it to open up. And that's where okay, well, brighten it
mm,
or rise above it to get a bird's eye view. Are you male or female? It
mm,
may be the opposite of what you are this time. How old are you? And then because What if you lived 90 years in that past life? We can't go through every year of that life, obviously. So we're going to jump to 4 or 5 important events that help define the influence on your current life.
Mhm.
And so we'll establish a scene. We'll get your name and other defining information of where you are, what's happening next, what's important to notice about what's going on. And you're speaking to me out loud,
Mhm.
and we're recording this. So you have a recording of what you say. So you can listen to it, tomorrow, next week, 6 months from now, 5 years from now, and still gain insight from it.
Yeah.
And then, all right, let's move to the next important event in that life that has to do with influencing your current life. 1, 2, 3, be at the next event. And maybe you move ahead 5, 10 years. Maybe you move, you reverse in age. It
Mm.
doesn't have to be linear. It doesn't have to be in chronological order. I've had people start at, let's say, the age 25, then they go to 12, then they go to 40, and then they go to 18, and then they go to, 62. It could be backwards. They
Mhm.
start at 62, then they go to 50, then they go to 30, and then they get to their last day on earth when they're 80. Um, it happens the way you need it to
Yeah.
happen. And so we'll jump to these places, and then every question, there's all these questions. What happens next? What is going on in this scene? Now, I've had people actually just have their past lives revolve around 3 days. So we'll
Mm.
jump to 4 or 5 different important events that just seem to take place within a 3-day period.
Mm.
Example would be maybe somebody who fears the ocean, fears stress and anxiety, fears conflict because their past life regression we go through, we find out they're the Normandy beach during World War II.
Mm.
It just takes place with all those 2 or 3 days around prepping and then storming and then the aftermath of storming Normandy during World War II. Or maybe it takes place start at 12 and go all the way to the age of 90 and just jump 4 or 5 different places. It can happen all sorts of ways. But the questions are the same. What is happening? What is going on? And maybe referring to things you've said to me. Well, how has that influenced the anxiety you're feeling around water? If that's something you've mentioned in the past. And you'll speak to me now. I'm guessing, and you'll be able to respond to this, Natasha, but I'm guessing people are really only giving me about 1/10 of what they're experiencing.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I'm in a large room and it's kind
Yeah.
of big and there's this oak table. It's like, yeah, but they're not, you know, it's like explaining your living room. Okay, well, there's a couch and there's a dining room table and there's a nice big painting on the wall next to my TV. It's like, but are you really describing the room? And so I'm guessing people really only are able to explain to me out loud 1/10 of really what they're experiencing.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
but it
that's
is pretty extraordinary.
yeah,
Mm,
that's right. And when I was listening back to the audio, I realized that, oh yeah, like it's only through my experience that I can remember all the detail, but what I'm saying is only a tenth, maybe even less
mm,
of the information that you're actually experiencing. Um, Something that surprised me was remembering a name for
mm.
myself. And the past life actually that I wanted to go into wasn't even the one that came up. And
Yeah.
I felt when you were emailing me and saying, what do you desire to go into? And I felt like a kid in a candy store. I was like, oh, I could know this and I could know that I could go into this. So I was like, I had to really sit with what I wanted to uncover because there's so many things that I would have loved to have gone into. But the one that I intended to go into wasn't the one that came up for me.
Mm,
Um, so I wanted to go back to a past life in Lemuria, which it did come up anyway,
mm,
slightly, but the one that was uh most probably important for me to tap into now was this druid priestess from the 1600s
mm,
speaking to the stones in Stonehenge. And I remembered
yeah.
her name, I remembered her age. There were parts, and I did want to ask you about this and to
Mhm.
explain this to the audience as well, because and I've heard this from other people, and even I experience portions of it. Oh, I don't know if I'm making this up, but this is what's coming to me. So I
Yeah.
think, yeah, I'd love to hear you explain more about that, because I know that going into this and others that I've spoken to that, yeah, I'm not really sure if I'm making it up, if it's just in my imagination. And,
Yeah.
I did feel this, but it's one thing that I find very interesting. But again, going into the world of intuition, and, we're having to learn not to question certain things that are coming up, because these are realms and information that we used to have once back in ancient times, but have lost. We're returning to this. So can you please speak into a little bit about that, the questioning and yeah, I'd love to hear what your take is on that.
Yeah, and it kind of comes down to the Carl Jung theory behind dreams, or your, more specifically, your daydreams and the way you imagine. Because there's a great story that it's probably apocryphal and didn't really happen, but it gives an idea of what I'm talking about. In that this in gentleman had a really strange, weird dream, and somebody recommended that he go to Carl Jung, the great psychotherapist back at the turn of the century, and to have his dream analyzed by Carl Jung. And so he goes to Carl Jung and he explains this strange, wild dream, and Carl Jung is very fascinated. They talk about it, and so Carl Jung says, "I want you to come back next week, write down your dreams, and we'll talk more about it and see how it all connects together." And so the next week, nothing happened. The guy didn't dream again. He's sitting in the park right before his appointment to Carl Jung. He's like, "I don't know what I'm going to do. I'll just make something up." And so he writes down in his journal, he just makes up something about being chased, maybe down the street by a blue wolf under the pink moon, or whatever he writes down. And so he goes to Carl Jung and he discusses this dream of his. And Carl Jung's very excited, and they talk about it and the meaning behind it all. And he's like, "Okay, I want you to come back next week and just write down whatever dream you might have." Guy doesn't dream again. He's sitting in the park. He's really upset. "I don't know what I'm going to do. I got his meeting with appointment with Dr. Jung, and well, I'll just write up another dream." Writes up another dream. He does this 4 or 5 times. He never dreamed again. He just had that one dream. And finally, after just 4 or 5 sessions of him making up a dream right before he walks into Carl Jung's office, he unloads and just say, "I feel so guilty. I've been making up these dreams. I really apologize. I've been wasting your time, and I'm really embarrassed by all this." And he's like, "No, don't be embarrassed. These dreams are fascinating, what you've written down, these daydreams, because why did you write that down? Why a blue wolf under a pink moon? Why did you come up with that?" And
Mm,
so that's what the entry is into it. And even one of the instructions, if as we kind of mentioned in the pre-talk before the actual past life regression, and if people are having struggles, like, just make it up for me. If
mm,
you didn't know where you were, walk, or you see the door, it's a dark room with a door. I want you to walk through the door and into a lighted room. And what do you see?
mm,
Even if you have to make it up for me, what do you see? Because why would you make that up?
mm,
And even if it's like, okay, well, I just saw Braveheart, or I just saw a World War I documentary, or I just saw a documentary about the Middle Ages or something, or I just saw, Monty Python, the Holy Grail or something. And so, of course, it's going to be back in the King Arthur era. But okay, let's start with that. Then what happens? Now you got to start coming up with something. And in this trance state that you're in, why are you making that up?
yeah,
What happens next? Now you got to come up with something. And why are
yeah.
you coming up with that? Your
Mhm.
subconscious mind and your superconscious level of mind is going to bring you the information the way you need to. And even if you feel within your conscious earthly brain, you're making it up, so what? Make it up.
Mm,
Because why are you making that up?
yeah,
Why are you making up that story? Why is that important
yeah,
during this trance state? And so there are a lot of questions that can help with that. I feel stuck. I can't get out of this room. But what if you could get out of that room and open the door? Look in your pocket. Oh, there's a key. Take the key, unlock the door, and open up the door. So, and that's where facilitating this really helps. Because
yes,
if you do get stuck, then there's ways of finding to go forward. Even
yeah,
if, like, asking guidance of your guides, because there will get to a point where we get to the very last day in that life.
Mhm.
And how does that life end? Because this is where a lot of what's called the throwing action happens. Is there grief? Is there pain? Is there anger? Is there despair? Do you have the notion that life is good or bad? Is it hard or easy? Is money easy to come by? Did you have a real poor, poverty-stricken life, and life is hard? What are you taking with you as you end that life? Do you regret that life? Are you angry that maybe you were killed in war as a young soldier? And are you carrying that with you into the spirit world and therefore into this current life? What are you bringing with you as you pass in the last moments of that life? And then move your spirit out of that body. And what does that feel like? That's what I love so much. People can tell you what is the experience, as if it's happening in slow motion. Explain the spirit leaving the body. What does that feel like to you? What do you feel like now? Some people describe it as an energy or light. How do you describe being in spirit form? Are there other spirits around you? And what does it feel like moving up to the spirit world? What
Yeah.
does that feel? And you're getting people to respond to you. Well, it feels like I'm being pulled by an energy or whatever their experience may be. Arriving at spirit, the gateway to spirit world, who meets you there?
Hmm.
And it's like, well, I'm surrounded by my friends. I'm surrounded by the other souls who are in my soul group. I'm surrounded, or my guide comes to meet me. Or if you align yourself with maybe some spirit animals, the wolf or the bear or the falcon or something, the bear comes to meet me. The
Hmm.
great bear of spirit, its spiritual bear comes to meet me, or whatever it is. And people have different experiences that are also somewhat similar.
Hmm.
And then while in spirit world, and again, we still have like an hour, maybe an hour and 10 minutes. We spent maybe 45 minutes, an hour in a past life. We still got an hour, maybe hour and a half to explore uh, the spirit world.
Yeah.
And so where do you need to go? Where do you go first? Do you go to some sort of orientation with your guide? And who is this guide?
Mm.
What's your guide's name? Is this the guide that stayed with you from the beginnings of your soul till now? Does he come meet
Mhm.
you on earth? Has that ever happened? Do you sense this guide as male or female or just an energy being? How do you sense yourself in the energy of spirit world? Do you need to go to the healing place? Yeah, I need to go to the healing place. Okay, one, two, three, be at the healing place. There is no time, there is no space up in the spirit world. So healing, 200 years of healing can happen in 2 minutes.
Mhm.
There is no time, there is no space. So even if the healing space is 2 light years away, you can be there in 1 second because there is no time, there is no space. So be there now. And what's going on in the healing space? Are there other beings there? Is your guide with you? Is it an energy healing? Is it spiritual healing? Is a physical healing? What's happening? Is it energy, light, water? People have different experiences and yet all seem somewhat similar.
Yeah.
And so as that healing happens, what did you learn from that past life?
Mhm.
How can what you learned from that past life, the hurt and pain, be applied in this current life that needs to be healed? How's it influencing?
Yeah.
Then maybe we go to the past life viewing room. Are there threads that connect various past life together, not just your current life and the one you just experienced? Are there others that connect together in some way? Maybe
Yeah.
you can see them on a large screen, or there's books of them, or however the metaphor is that you sense it as with your human brain.
Mhm.
And there's so many places you go. I've had people spontaneously go to the library, which is fascinating because Michael Newton talks about that. So I was like, I need to go to the library.
Yeah.
Okay, I never been to the library, and they go to the library, and other maybe they just hang out with their friends.
Yeah.
I just want to hang out with my friends and relax. Fine, 2 minutes can be like
Yeah.
200 years. Rest and relax and have a vacation with your friends. Where do you go? What are your friends? What does their energy look like? What are your friends' names? What are your spiritual name? Oh, that's what's so incredible. So you can get your spiritual name.
Yeah.
And but then we always end up towards the end of the experience in the current life selection room, if you will. And why this life? Why this time period? Why born the year you were born? Why do you live? I mean, there's lots of places to live. Why did you pick Flagstaff, Arizona? Why did you pick Sydney, Australia? Why did you pick Paris, France? Why did you pick to live, on the outskirts of the Serengeti?
Mm.
Why did you pick these places? How does that help you? Why did you pick this gender? Do
Mhm.
you often pick this gender? Is it 50-50 split? Is it more often you're this gender or that gender?
Mhm.
And why? And you
Mm.
get the answers. It's extraordinary. But also, what's your purpose in this life? What are you here to do?
Yeah.
What is your main goal, your ultimate goal? What is your mission? And how are you going to achieve that? What action steps do you need to take? And who in this current life was in that past life?
Yeah.
Is there any connections? Are they related to your spirit group, your soul group? This
Mhm.
kind of group that moves with you, sort of like you become a new soul. You get born as a new soul, and then you get into this group in kindergarten. And from kindergarten, you all move together, growing, developing,
Yeah.
learning, all the way up to getting to your PhDs together. And you come to Earth, and maybe you play different roles for each other to help that learning and the growing.
Yeah.
And when you realize that maybe some of the hurt and pain you've experienced in this life was set up to help you grow and develop, a lot of forgiveness happens. And I know that that's a trigger word
Mm.
and a hard word sometimes to deal with. But especially when you've experienced a lot of hurt and pain and trauma, if you could just imagine wrapping your head around the fact that maybe somebody who wasn't so wonderful,
Yeah.
wasn't so nurturing, what if they took on that role to help you grow and develop into the person you are now? And
Totally.
that's extraordinary to think somebody, you got to play the villain. Someone has to play Darth Vader, you know,
Exactly.
someone has to play the stormtrooper. And so extraordinary that somebody would care enough to be that person and play that role. And that's a hard one to swallow. That's a hard one to wrap your
It
head around.
is. Yeah, but I
It's
love
sort
it.
of
Yeah.
interesting.
I love
But
that you mentioned that because it's something I talk about as well. It's like, when we're talking about government bodies and things like that that's happening in the world, it's like, can you imagine choosing that role for the sake of waking up humanity to their own power? Like,
yeah,
yes, I know it's a hard pill to swallow, and thank you for bringing up forgiveness too, because I think it's the way that it's been framed and the
yeah,
way that people understand what forgiveness is the difficult part to swallow. But when we understand really how to move through it and get there and perceive it, it doesn't become so difficult. But there is a process, of healing to get to that point. We
yeah.
have to allow things to move through us and to really heal it. But yeah, I love that you
Well,
mentioned.
I mean, can you imagine you're having the big meeting up in the spirit world about who's going to play what part and what's, or like drawing a map on the whiteboard. Okay, here's what we're going to work on in this life. And somebody, the director is handing out the roles like it's a community theater
Yeah.
project or something. And you open up your script, you're like, Judas,
Yeah.
what? I don't want to. What do you mean? I do what? And or imagine, okay, we need somebody to play Judas. You're going to be vilified for all of eternity. Who wants to play that role? It's like,
Exactly.
or your friends take one step back and you're like, oh, I guess it's
Yeah.
me. Um,
Like, should
imagine
I
if
not?
that, yeah, imagine it. I talk about trust and courage and
Oh,
and vulnerability to like, okay, if this is the what needs to happen for learning and for growth and for development. And then again, that's a hard one to wrap your head around
yeah.
sometimes because there is extraordinary trauma, there's
Yeah.
extraordinary pain,
Hmm.
people hurting other people, and it's hard to wrap your God, what if is that happening on purpose? What is going on?
Yes.
And the hard one to it hurts to
It
hear
does.
about it. And then it's like, God, what if somebody volunteered to do that? My God, it's hard one to, like I said, it's hard one to wrap your head around.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is. And
Real mind twist.
it's not that we condone behaviors here, but it's helping us to understand and perceive it on a different level, and to move through it ourselves, because forgiveness is really about you letting yourself, opening up yourself to experience everything that is. It's not really about condoning or letting other people off the hook. It's actually about the self, which always, but I want
And again, it's hard. It's very triggering
to,
because there is a lot of hurt and pain. There's physical abuse, there's
yeah,
emotional abuse. And if you've been in a situation, if you're listening to this and you've been through something horrendous like that, it's not a scapegoat or saying you should shrug it off or
exactly.
automatically just forgive. It's a hard one,
Yeah,
but it's just also, you know, there's so many ways we choose to learn and grow, and it's not to excuse
no,
the evil that's done in the world, but it's also a head scratcher too,
yeah.
because just, and I know Christianity can be a trigger as well, but just to going back to that
Hmm.
story doesn't happen without Judas,
Hmm. Yeah.
and so how did that whole thing happen? And isn't he? It becomes a mind twist. Well, wouldn't that make him the greatest disciple? And
Yeah.
then, and that's a hard one to come across too if you've grown up in the Christian church
Yep.
and you were Episcopalian, then you went to a Baptist school and you're trying to wrap your head around that one.
Exactly.
And I'm not saying I have all the answers or I can explain everything, but just, maybe it becomes more empowering.
Yeah.
You
And I
don't,
think
you're
when you,
not the victim. You're not
yeah,
the victim. It doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. And it doesn't mean it wasn't traumatizing,
hmm,
but maybe you're not a victim,
yeah,
you know. I don't know. I don't know if
yeah,
that helps.
yeah, totally, totally does. And I think when we go through the natural process of healing, naturally letting go of our trauma, like feeling the trauma, like, moving through it in the correct way. If we want to go to that next level of healing, then, forgiveness and compassion and understanding is,
Yeah.
it's a natural step to go towards when you're ready, but it doesn't go, you don't go from heavy trauma straight to forgiveness. It's, there's a,
Yeah, yeah. Oh, no, 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 no. And it often creates more questions than answers, maybe.
yes,
For every answer you get in your past life and spiritual regression, maybe you come up with 10 more questions.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Um,
Mm.
so drawing back to my own experience is something I was curious, one of the things I was curious about was, oh, okay, I want to go back to why I've got asthma.
Mm.
And then I decided against it. I thought, no, I really want to uncover this information first. I can always do another session with you to uncover that. But it came up naturally. It came up
Yeah.
when I went back to my 7-year-old self in this lifetime. It came to me naturally. I could all of a sudden just feel myself breathing. My lungs were clear. And I was saying when I was listening back to the audio, it was profound again that the healing was is us coming back to who we truly are and seeing what the distortions are around the illnesses. So that's my experience, was seeing that I'm already whole. I don't need to believe in this illness. And I'm not discounting, there's layers to this, but
Yeah.
my experience was, oh, I'm already whole. I don't need to take on this illness and this ailment. This is something that I've actually been given as a gift to see my own empowerment. And so that was really profound for me. And I was saying through the session, I'm healed. It's done. Like, that's it. There's no more asthma. Now, what I'm experiencing now is that, and I said it through the session, was there's a part of me that doesn't believe this, that doesn't want to believe this. So that's the part for me that I'm working on now is, okay,
Mhm.
I know what the truth is that I'm already whole and I don't need this ailment, but the belief is something that I'm working through, is helping my mind believe that that's true, because there's a part of me that's like, oh no, I can't just get rid of it
Sure.
like so.
And in this human body, your nervous system, maybe quite possibly even your brain is wired and programmed to experience stress and trauma by shutting down your lungs, maybe.
Mm.
And, again, some more stuff to work on. Not everything's just a one session in your life is all
Yeah.
rainbows and unicorns.
Hmm.
But from wisdom comes great healing. And by even just understanding why maybe you have a situation like that, the healing process begins,
Exactly.
and with your mind, like hypnotherapy, yeah, it doesn't heal a broken leg overnight.
Yeah.
But research shows that it heals it 40% faster than
Yeah.
not using hypnotherapy. So instead of taking 8 weeks, it can take 5.
Yeah.
And so that's pretty extraordinary what the body can do. It
Totally.
can even more quickly than expected.
Yeah. And I
And
knew it in my body. I knew it. Like it was a knowing, like, no, I'm healed. I don't need, it's simply my belief that is stopping me from fully healing from this. And that's the process that I'm integrating after our session is coming back to that belief. Um,
yeah,
so yeah, it's so fascinating and so empowering. But I want to go into some common fears that people may have leading into this kind of therapy. And one of them I'd love you to touch on as well is someone might be very nervous to go into potentially a past life that's triggering and they might
yeah,
feel like they're stuck in that space. So what's your way of kind of
yeah.
helping navigate through that?
This work, and whether it's clinical hypnotherapy, in that we're working on maybe some trauma in this life, maybe you experienced as a child or as a teenager or later, or maybe you're just looking for confidence, or doing a past life regression and that more deeper, intense work of a past life regression. It's always, always, always done in a safe way.
Mm.
It's done in a gentle way. And in fact, one of the instructions of right before you move into a past life is your super conscious level mind, that higher self that is you, knows where you're going. Maybe consciously within your human brain here on Earth, you don't know where you're going, but your super conscious level mind knows exactly where you're going. And if it's going to be a joyful life, it's going to be a happy life filled with knowledge and discovery and insight, then you can be in that life and experience it as if it's fully 3D, like you're walking and talking with these people and in that era. But if it's going to be more intense, if you need to experience or gain insight and discovery around a past life that was really intense, again, maybe like the example I used, the 3 days of storming Normandy Beach in World War II, then maybe you can watch it as if it's a movie on a screen. Again, part of the warm up. Maybe you can watch it as if you have a bird's eye view, so you're watching it down below, so you're disassociated from it.
Yeah.
We're not going to put you right in the middle of
Yeah.
something horrendous. Uh, you're going to protect yourself in the way that is best for you.
Mhm.
And I'm there to lifeguard. And if it's too intense, okay, get out of it. We've already
Yeah.
practiced this in the warm-up exercise. Turn off the kitchen scene, turn off the movie theater scene, turn up the lights, turn down the lights, turn up the sound, turn down the sound,
Mhm.
zoom out, whatever you need to do, especially to create a safe place. So it's always done in a safe way. In fact, those are specific instructions I say 2 or 3 times before we even move into past life. Do this in a safe way. Your
Mhm.
subconscious mind and super conscious levels of mind, your higher self knows how to do that to
Mhm.
keep you safe. So this is a gentle experience that where you gain the knowledge, the information to heal in this current life.
Yeah.
And you do. And
Yeah.
you do. And if there is issues, let's get out of it. All right, I
Yeah.
want you to move to a more safe scene. Let's do that now.
Yeah.
One, two, three, do that now.
Yeah.
And since you've already practiced that in the warm-up exercise, you know how to do it.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
Common
Yeah.
misconceptions regarding your therapy.
I think, well, especially with past life regression, I get when talking to people about it at the coffee shop or, hanging out with a party or something, oh, everybody thinks they're Napoleon or Cleopatra. I've never met Napoleon. I've never met Cleopatra. Uh, People have the experience they have. Oftentimes, they're more working class,
Mhm.
commoner person, if you will. Uh, and even if somebody had the experience of being Napoleon or Cleopatra or, Queen Victoria, whoever, Gandhi even. Maybe it's not so much that you were Napoleon or Cleopatra or Mother Teresa or whoever, but you're experiencing that lifetime
Yeah.
for healing or for information. Or I've gone through my own healing of hurt and pain in this life, and one of the reasons I kind of even got into this information because it's a long story, but basically, it seemed like me and a couple other people who I became strangely acquainted with were holding on to hurt and pain for some other people in a past life. And it
Mm.
sounds weird and strange, and it's a longer story for some other time. But the only way the experience that we had together makes any sense is if we came to this earth to help heal other people's hurt and pain. Or maybe it was like our group. Let's say there's 7 or 8 of us in this soul group that is ours, that we've grown up from, tiny baby souls through kindergarten and high school and into getting our master's degree. And at some point in a past life, two of our group has some extraordinary hurt and pain and trauma.
Mm.
And the rest of us decided, we're going to come to this life and fix that for them, to take on that burden and deal with that. And it's the only way, you know, I personally can like make any sense of the experience I had with these other people, is that, well, that wasn't me and it wasn't us, it was somebody else. And the only
Mm.
reason I could think that that would happen is because we're trying to help somebody else in our own group help heal. And so maybe that's what's happening.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not even your hurt and pain that you're experiencing in that the past life you need experience. Maybe you're dealing with something else.
Mm.
And so the basic misconception is, oh, everybody who does a past life thinks they're Napoleon or Cleopatra. No, I've never experienced that. Never had anybody experience that. Oftentimes, it's quite a bit vague. Well, I think my name is Thomas, and I'm in the 1600s, and I seem to be in a village, and there's no I'm absolutely Napoleon or I'm whoever Queen Victoria.
Yes.
And but the other thing is that a lot of people think just with this hypnosis, and I know we're running up against time, so I'll try and make this brief.
Yeah, that's okay.
That the state of hypnosis is a way to control people, and
Yes.
it's not. And it's unfortunate because that's what is portrayed in the movies and TV shows, and it's just a way to move plot point forward. How are you going to get Jason Bourne to assassinate the Prime Minister of England? It's like, well, let's hypnotize them because we don't want to waste a bunch of film and time and money showing how to train them. So we'll just hypnotize them. It's like, that's not the way it works.
Yeah.
But, well, I saw a show in Las Vegas, or I saw a show at a comedy club, or I saw a YouTube video where these people are on stage and they were clucking like chickens or singing like Elvis Presley or dancing like Michael Jackson or pretending they were on a roller coaster or whatever the gag was. It's like, okay, yeah, I see. Assuming that's not faked out by a bunch of actors or the local improv troupe. Well, let's say
Mm.
that's for real. Let's say that's absolutely genuine and for real. That show is for real. And I've seen shows that, yeah, that's got to be real. They volunteered to be up there. The hypnotist who's performing the show, people paid money to be there, big money to be there and to be entertained. So he's going to entertain them. So he's going to ask for volunteers. And he or she, the hypnotherapist or the hypnotist, is going to say, oh, we're going to have a great show tonight and have a lot of fun. Who wants to come up here and have a great time? And a bunch of people raise their hand. So who's that, hypnotist going to pick? People not raising the hand or making themselves small? Well, I don't want to do this. Of course not. They're not going to pick that person. They're going to pick the person who's excited to be out there, who wants to be there. They're an extrovert. They're an exhibitionist. They want a funny video to put on TikTok or Instagram or something. They want to be funny in front of their friends.
Yeah.
They want to press their girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever. And so they get up there and have a great time. And, even when they get up there, sit down in the seat, and the hypnotist says, and what's your name and where you're from? And you want to go into hypnosis and have a great show? Absolutely, I do. I mean, they say yes, like 7 times. They bought a ticket to the show. They sat down in their seat. They volunteered, raising their hands, jumping up and down, and walk up on stage and tell them, yeah, I absolutely want to go into hypnosis and have a fun show. And they say yes 6, 7 times before this guy makes them sing like Elvis Presley or impersonate Beyonce or dance like Michael Jackson or whatever the deal is. And so it's really unfortunate because I think it scares a lot of people away from wanting to come to this therapy. But imagine if you so want to have a fun time and do a good show and have a funny video to put on YouTube that you're willing to act silly like that. What if you want to heal?
Yeah.
What are the possibilities that you're going to be able to do that? And what's extraordinary about this work is I'm not going to fix you.
Hmm.
And hypnotherapy is not going to fix you. You're going to fix yourself.
Yeah.
Because who better to know what the problem is than you?
Mm.
And more importantly, who better to know what the answer is than you? Who better to know how to solve this problem? Even if you're not consciously aware of even what the problem is, your subconscious mind does. That's why you have the problem. That's why
Yeah.
you feel the anxiety or the anger or the overwhelm or the worry or the rage or the fear every time somebody raises their voices in the office next door to yours at work and you cower because maybe there's a lot of yelling in your home growing up. Your
Hmm.
subconscious mind knows what the problem is, and more importantly, it knows what to do about it. And that's why I don't fix it. I facilitate people healing themselves.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to give you your past life. Do
Yeah.
that yourself. I'm not going to do the hard work. You do the hard work.
Yeah.
I'm tired. I'm 57. I'm not going to do the hard work of telling you what your past lives are. You experience
Yeah.
it yourself. It's
It's
funner
not,
that way too.
yeah, totally. And something that I was going to mention before is when we were talking about the uh, whether people feel like it's being made up or not, even if it's fake, say
Mm.
all of this isn't real, you still come out with extremely empowering, insightful messages that help you.
Okay,
So,
yeah,
like,
I think that's an
I believe
extraordinary point.
it,
Yeah.
but it's like, even if that was the case, you still are coming out with something that is going to help you.
That's an extraordinary point because, okay, let's say we could prove for a fact, which we cannot, but let's say we can prove for a fact that past lives aren't a thing.
Mhm.
Well, why are you experiencing that? Well, then that's your
Yeah.
subconscious mind's way of needing to heal in this life. Again, it's the Carl Jung thing. Well, why'd you make that up? What healing can you achieve from this metaphor or this symbolism or this allegory or this storytelling that you're doing? What healing, what insights, what discoveries? How can you grow and develop because of the archetypes you're going through as used by your subconscious mind? That's the minimum.
Mm.
You're going to heal just because your subconscious mind is granting you this ability to create these archetypes and heal through this storytelling and this metaphor and this mythology. But what if it's real? And according to some of the research that's coming out, it's quite extraordinary. Again, this is probably a whole nother show,
Yes.
but you know, the ancient wisdom keepers talk about the third eye. They talk about this inner sight, and what research has come out in the last decade or so is a part of the brain that seems to be associated with that is the pineal gland. And of
Yeah.
course, a lot of information about the pineal gland. I'm not going to go on and on about it, but really quickly, the pineal gland is the main task of the pineal gland is melatonin production, your circadian rhythm, so you can get a good night's sleep. But there's these crystals in the pineal gland. Look this up. Go Google pineal gland crystals. And through the extraordinary scientific advances of the electron microscope, we can see these crystals within pineal gland, millions of them. And if you were to take a hair out of your head, these crystals are 1/20th to 1/100th of a micron of a human head of hair. So these things are extraordinarily tiny, but there's no evolutionary need for these crystals. They don't help with melatonin. They have nothing to do with melatonin. But what we know is applying pressure to these crystals, like so many other crystals in the world that are in your watch, that
Mhm.
are in your phone, in your computer, or whatever electronic in your car, it conducts electricity. It can create electromagnetic field. The crystals within your pineal gland, when applied pressure through breathing techniques and circulating the cerebral fluid, will create pressure and create an electromagnetic field within your brain, which then kind of gets big and then it implodes upon itself and then it gets even bigger. And what this effect does, according to research, I'm not making this up, or it's not wishful thinking, research has shown that this electromagnetic effect creates a transducer uh, kind of protocol. And a transducer back in the day back in the 1970s, 1980s, when I wanted to watch a TV show, I wanted here in America, we're watching Cheers and MASH and Happy Days. I knew at Tuesday at 8 o'clock, I needed to watch Happy Days. And so I turned my TV to channel 10. And at Tuesdays at 8 p.m., a TV station in Los Angeles would take a film and video of that episode of Happy Days, put it into their technology, their machinery, and a transducer would take that film and that audio, turn it into a frequency and shoot it up into the airways. And then at Tuesday at 8 o'clock, I would turn my TV to channel 10, and the antennas on the top of my house and in my TV would vibrate just microscopically to the same frequency as that episode of Happy Days, draw it into my TV, which has a transducer, and that transducer would turn that frequency back into image and back into sound. And now I get to watch Happy Days or Cheers or MASH or whatever the show is. That's what your pineal gland is doing.
Yeah.
It is a transducer. Another research study that was Frontiers of Psychology. It was published in the journal Frontiers of Psychology, states that basically memory and information is not held within the brain, but is held within 0-point field.
Mm.
And 0-point field, if you were to look at an atom, the atom that makes me, the atoms that make you, Natasha, the plant behind you, the chair, the picture, the malls, everything is made of atoms. If you were to look at an atom with an electron microscope and just start going deeper and deeper, you're seeing quarks and subatomic particles until the very essence of an atom, the things that make up our universe, is energy.
Yep.
And this binds all things. Of course, in Star Wars, they call it the Force, but it's this energy that binds all things that makes all things, exist. And it seems, according to this research published in the Frontiers of Psychology, that all information is held within this field. And it's this transducer in the pineal gland, when activated, can pull that information in. And so it's really your ability, we all have the ability by, warming ourselves up and doing these processes to activate the pineal gland and bring in this information. And by knowing how to turn the channel to the right TV station, as in go back to the past life that is most influencing your current life, or go back to the past life where I met my greatest spiritual teacher, or go back to the past life where I created this talent to play the cello. Whatever channel I want to go to, I'll bring in that information.
Mm.
And it's extraordinary because this isn't just me making it up or pretending or I'm writing a science fiction novel. The research is out there.
Yeah.
And extraordinarily how much information has come about the pineal gland. And
even the experiences that children are speaking about.
oh my God, yeah.
Like,
yeah.
You cannot ask, and things have been proven. They've gone back into documents that proves that that person lived that lifetime, which this child in this lifetime is speaking about to incredible detail. So that in itself is just, it's...
Yeah, a lot of books out there that follow, research, find those books about children in past lives.
Yeah.
And they'll even villages where the kid says, I'm this person, that person. They go to the next village 200 miles away. And they're like, yeah, that person died 10 years ago. And this 8-year-old boy knows all the information. It's extraordinary.
It is.
Absolutely
extraordinary. And I like it that you were saying before, thank you for bringing the science too, because I had that written on my notes here and I forgot to bring it up. So that's, it's great information. Going back to quickly the practice over lifetimes, that's something that I've experienced too. And what I experienced in your session was another confirmation of that, is that I've been practicing the work that I do now. I've been practicing for lifetimes in different ways, different embodiments. So it's just
and that's what's interesting, especially around the theory of if this what we're experiencing here on Earth in our human form is a computer simulation. Of course, lots of science to back up that theory.
Yep.
But what is a simulation? But like a flight simulator that a pilot may need to go on. He needs to fly into Paris next week. Never been to Paris, so he's going to get on, or she's going to get on a flight simulator, and the pilot's going to practice. What happens if there's turbulence over the Atlantic, depending on which way you're flying. But what if there's turbulence over the Atlantic, or it's in the dark or in the rain, or they switch runways. They're going to practice all these various scenarios so that when they actually need it, it's there. They have the knowledge, the training, the understanding. So if this world of ours that we're experiencing right now is a simulation, what is it that what is it that we need? What
Yeah.
are we here to learn that we're going to use maybe somewhere else? And with your experience, that was quite extraordinary. There's so many threads between
Mhm.
that experience you had and the one you're experiencing now, and as well as getting some even more information kind of with other past lives that have threads through it
Yeah.
of different timelines that, well, maybe at some point you are training, and this is, I'm just making this up off the top of my head,
Yeah.
but if you're yourself training to be a guide in the spirit world, to retire from this earthly existence because you're getting your PhD. And maybe this earthly existence is your, when you're doing your PhD, you have to do some sort of dissertation. Maybe this is your dissertation over the couple of lifetimes
Yeah.
because you are training to be a guide up in that life. You're going to start training the young souls. You're being groomed to be the next guide for a group of souls. And so you're continuing this training in various scenarios. And it doesn't mean that your next life is going to be in, if you do another life, is going to be in 2080
Mhm.
or 2256. You may go back, why wouldn't you just go, wow, I really feel like I need more of that information as a shaman. I think I need to go back to maybe experiencing somewhere in South America of Peru back in 1298. You know, it doesn't mean that this is linear, that
Totally.
your first life started in 10 BC and then 500 and then 1869 and now 20, the 2000s. Maybe you're jumping all over the place,
Yeah.
just
That's
or why not even experience, you need to experience how everyone felt within World War II. So you experienced being French, being a Parisian during
mm,
the occupation, the Nazis. You experienced what it was like to be a Jew in Poland. You
yeah.
experienced what it is to be conscripted as a Nazi, as a young man, to be a concentration camp guard. You experienced what it was to be an American soldier on Normandy Beach, or a Japanese pilot on at Pearl Harbor. I mean, why not experience these different scenarios around this in the same timeline as with different viewpoints for your learning and your
Totally.
growth?
Yeah,
Why
it's all
not?
perception, isn't it? All of it
Yeah,
is perception that we're experiencing to know the self. Um,
yeah,
yeah, when I was experiencing it, it was just time stacked. It's not linear at all. It's actually stacked on top of each other. So that was interesting. And the choice thing was interesting when I was viewing myself in the spirit world, before I came down. I was moving through this space and it was like, I think it's Inside Out, that movie where there's like these
oh,
glass baubles.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, and that's how I viewed it. It was like all these glass baubles, and in each glass bauble was that lifetime experience, who you're with, the role you're
Mhm.
going to play, everything was in that bauble and that experience. And so what I was doing was choosing, that's the one that's going to help me evolve the best
Yeah, yeah,
for my soul's
yeah,
journey. So that was interesting.
yeah, yeah. Because why not, have, because it's been my experience in working with people that there is some choice around the life
Yeah,
you pick. And
definitely.
the questions are asked, why?
Yeah.
Why? Why am I a white male in America living in Flagstaff, Arizona? How does that help me as
Yeah.
opposed to, being a black woman in Alabama,
Mhm.
back in the 1960s? Why did I choose this time?
Yeah.
And you'll get some insightful answers.
Yeah, and that's
Mhm.
what I loved about your sessions as well, is that you ask lots of great questions to open up the experience and the insight and the understanding. So I feel like I could talk to you for another half an hour, but we
Yeah,
can't because of time.
yeah,
But yeah, from my session with you, I just wanted to mention, in case someone feels drawn to having an experience with you, which I highly encourage. I received more purpose, more clarity, insightful messages, and a whole bunch of healing and understanding of what this is as well. So I have to mention that just as a quick testimonial, I guess. But this, you are here because of the experience that I had with you, and I really want to promote you to the audience
Thank
and
you.
say that, like, I felt extremely safe with you. It was an incredible experience, and yeah, I think it's empowering work. Do you have a last message that you wish to share with people, some kind of encouragement or positive message?
You all have the ability and the power. You're all powerful people, and you can do this work of, if you just want to talk about it and email, or we can even get on the phone or a Zoom call and just chat about it for a little bit. But you have the ability and the power to do this. It's not just for a select few. There are some people who maybe have more, talent towards it, so they become psychics or mediums, or the ability to read Akashic records or things like that. But you have the ability to read your own book of your life and to do so for healing. You're allowed to do that. You have the power, you have the ability to do that. So if you have any hesitation about it because you think you can't,
Mm.
or you think you want other people to do it for you, I'd say just at least look into it and find out more information, because we all have this extraordinary pineal gland, and we begin in it for a reason. There's crystals within our brain that create an electromagnetic field. And it's extraordinary how powerful we are, how amazing we are, and to be able to tap up into spirit is pretty extraordinary. But we all have the ability to do it. So if you're hesitating, I would say please explore the possibilities that if this interests you at all, if this resonates with you at all, know that you have the power to have an experience, and it's quite insightful and really healing.
Yeah, for sure. And have you got anything going on with your work at the moment that you wish people to know about? And how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, the best way, again, I have the most complicated of business names, but if and there'll probably be links everywhere, but
Yes.
Arizona Integrative Hypnotherapy, even if you're interested in past life regression, you can find me there at Arizona Integrative Hypnotherapy. I'm in Flagstaff, Arizona. So even if you just Google search Flagstaff Hypnosis, Flagstaff AZ for Arizona Hypnosis, you can find me under Arizona Integrative Hypnotherapy under Google search. But the other name is Divinus Arcana. It's Latin for sacred mystery, where I'm using hypnosis for spiritual healing. And you find me those ways, just shoot me an email, and or maybe we'll get on a Zoom call or a phone call, and just I'm happy to talk about this stuff. I love talking about it. It's extraordinary work, and it's fun to do, and it's honoring, and to be able to help people with this is quite a bit. In terms of what I'm doing, nothing too unusual about, actually, as we record this in a couple of weeks, to make my first trip to England to kind of visit some sites of my ancestry. And
Oh,
my ancestors, my great 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 grandfather was the priest of a church in Norwich County, Long Stratton, England. And we're going to visit this church that my great great grandfather was a priest at back in 1620s. And I'm really excited because of to be able to attach to my ancestors in that way. That's become some of the work I've been doing the last few years. So it's humbling and it's honoring to not only help people but also dig deeper into my own work, and this hypnotherapy is a big part of the healing I've done in the world. I mean, in my world for
yeah.
myself. So
Oh,
yeah,
how exciting.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm excited to hear about that trip.
yeah,
But yeah, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your service to humanity.
yeah. Thank you.
The way that you work is with such deep integrity, and I really honor that in every healer who is serving in the way that you are. So thank you for that. And yeah, thanks for being a part of it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you, Natasha. I so appreciate not only your trust and courage in doing this past life regression with me, but your vulnerability in talking about it because it's quite a private thing. But I appreciate you being willing to discuss it and talk about it.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.